Hello and welcome to another show of Talk of the Devils. I'm your host Dave Murphy. I'm once again joined by former Manchester United centre back Scott Wootton. Scott, it's been a couple of weeks. I want to jump right into it. It's been a couple of weeks. We've had the Christmas festivities, and we've had games cancelled. We've had games. Some teams having to play a lot of games at once. Within that period. And we've had teams like Manchester United have had 2 weeks off in that period. But first of all, before we get jumping into that, good Christmas. I know you're out injured at the moment, so obviously a bit of frustration for you in that respect.
Yeah, but no, obviously frustrating to be injured and miss being out on the pitch and training every day. But obviously on the flip side, it's allowed me to have a bit more of a relaxed Christmas mentally. Obviously, you're always focusing, concentrating on games. Boxing Day, you've got a game. That doesn't mean I was stuffing my face with 2 or 3 turkeys on Christmas Day, obviously. But it was nice just mentally knowing that I wasn't going to be playing probably till early January. That I could switch off a little bit mentally and be invested in the time with my family, which obviously on every usual Christmas, you're not allowed to do. So. That part of it was nice, and everything went well. So no complaints. How about you? The same.
Pretty much. I mean, it must be frustrating though, as a footballer. Being out injured. Still having to train every day. But not be able to participate. With the game at the end of the week. For me, that'd be equivalent to me baking a cake and not being allowed to eat it. So that's the only way I can equate with. So. I know over the Christmas period it's a little bit different because it's nice that you can spend more time with your family. But are you an impatient footballer? Are you one of those guys that hates to be training all week and then not being able to play at the weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm probably in the 95% of all the other footballers. You get the odd ones who it doesn't affect or can deal with it good. But I like your analogy. But it is a bit like that. The only reason you're in football is to play football, and when you obviously can't do that, whether it's you're not in a team or you've got an injury, whatever the suspension, whatever the reason might be, it's incredibly frustrating. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't change however old or young you get. It is like I say, that's the main reason you grow up and you want to play football is to play in front of that crowd at the end of the week and try and fight for 3 points. So when you can't do that, it is it's incredibly annoying.
Well, hopefully see you back on the pitch pretty soon.
There's no problems. I'll be back very shortly. No issues whatsoever. So I'm no longer would say I'm injured now. You know what I mean? I'm fully fit and ready to go. So got obviously a huge game in the FA Cup this weekend. Good test.
Big test. Massive test for Manchester United after 2 weeks off where, we had the Newcastle game, but, we had a lot of rest over the Christmas period. We went into the game against Wolves on the back of a draw with Newcastle. I don't even know how to explain what happened next. The only plus from it was the return of Phil Jones, which we can touch on later on. But Manchester United, once again, beaten at home by a team that you're expected to beat. Old Trafford, as we know, hasn't become the fortress that it once was. Teams come and seem to enjoy playing against Manchester United these days. But we've bought into this idea of the pressing game that Rangnick is supposed to be bringing. And apart from Burnley, maybe a 30-40 minute stint against them and 30 minutes against Crystal Palace in his very first game, it's been pretty dire, hasn't it? I mean, it really has. So what was your thoughts on the Wolves game? For me, it was an absolute mess. We spend more time passing the ball sideways and backwards than we do actually pressing forward. And in the end, we paid the price for it. So what was your view on the United game against Wolves?
Yeah, I think it was pretty dull. Yeah, I think you've touched on it there. Wasn't exciting, wasn't really enjoyable to watch. I don't even think they pressed that well. I think probably until Bruno come on and showed a little bit of spark, you were struggling to see where the goal was going to come from, really. Wolves, credit to Wolves, I think they've improved since the new manager's gone in. And, United looks like constantly, with every new manager that's come in since Ferguson left, it always looks like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back almost. You know what I mean? And we seem to be at that same point again. All the all the noise on the outside seems positive about Ralph Ragnick, but results were okay. I mean, he couldn't have asked for a better start in terms of the fixtures and the league positions of the teams he was playing against. I think we covered that on an earlier show, but performance levels, and has there been a massive change? Has there been a spike in performances? I don't really think there has, and I think Wolves is probably the worst one. Newcastle wasn't much better, as you just said there as well, and it seems to be the same old problems, whoever who's the manager. One thing I will say in regards to what you mentioned about the pressing is, I remember we said at the start, and I said it won't change overnight, and you're seeing that bounce, and that new manager bounce that people like to call it, and it does happen. It's true. A new manager comes in, a new boss, a new teacher, whoever it might be. There's that automatic, all right, we've got to impress the new guy, so whatever he says happens. But I remember seeing stats under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. United were I think they were 20th for distance covered in the league, basically meaning they ran the least. Now he's come in, and he will expect them, and he'll want them to be in the top 4 or 5. He'll probably want them to be the best in terms of sprinting, high speed running, distance covered on the pitch. And you can't. That needs time to be programmed into them. I was quite surprised with the time off they had before the Newcastle game. I thought they would have got some really, really good training into the legs and into the body, and start to see some adaptations from the manager's methods. But again, listening to his press conferences, it was a mess because people having COVID, the training ground was shut down, so that's not would have helped them. That would have been a huge disruption for him and for the squad. But I still just think, for the standards Man United have, you'd still expect more for the players, for the quality of players they've got. I still think performances can be a lot better.
So you spoke about him. You spoke about a manager coming in and trying to implement his way of playing. Is because Rangnick is on a 6-month interim and a 2-year consultancy. Is his management? Is it undermined because of that? Are the players thinking that well, I don't really have to buy into this. He's not going to be the manager in 6 months' time. Does that play a part?
It might have if he wasn't going into the consultancy role, I feel. But the fact that he is going into upstairs, I don't think that would come into the players' minds, really. I think, if anything, it would make them go the other way, because they think this guy is not coming in for 6 months and then he's going back to Germany, or he's going for another job. He's still going to be making huge football decisions. So if I'm not pulling me weight, or if he thinks I haven't got a good attitude or whatnot, he's going to be feeding that information straight away to the new manager, or he could be making decisions to move players on, because he's still going to be at the club, obviously heavily involved in the decision making. We're led to believe. So no, I don't think I'd be amazed if that was the case. But the reports that we're hearing coming out of the club doesn't sound great.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that in a minute, but I want to jump back to the Wolves game. We started with Ronaldo, Cavani up front, which is my preferred, front two. He dropped Bruno, he dropped Rashford. We've heard his press conference. He's not afraid to call people out. He's not afraid to say he's not happy about things. I think that was the only thing I think Ole was a little bit weaker on, is that he wanted to be everybody's friend, and it just doesn't work that way when you're trying to do, when you're trying to run a football club. When you're in a job that you have to let people down because you only have 11 players, you can't keep everyone happy. He did drop Bruno, he did drop Rashford. But in the last couple of games, he seems to have brought off what I seem to be, our best player on the pitch at the time, which is Mason Greenwood. He brought Greenwood off again. Rashford, I just don't get it. I mean, what's the thought process behind, taking Greenwood off all the time, especially against Wolves, when he looked like the only player that was willing to bust a gut?
Yeah, I think with Greenwood, and this happens all the time, with him being the youngest player, he's just the easy option. I think he likes Cavani for his work rate and what he brings to the team, and rightly so. For as bigger calls as he made, can Ralph Ragnick bring Ronaldo off on 60 minutes at Old Trafford? I don't think so. I just don't think he can. I don't think that would go down well. One, with Ronaldo, and he'll know the influence he has in the dressing room because of obviously what he's achieved in the game. Obviously, the fans absolutely adore Ronaldo, and rightly so, for what he's done for the club. So if he's looking for a spark and he wants to bring someone into the pitch, into the game, like Rashford, you know, is it going to be Ronaldo? No. Cavani? No. Greenwood's, he's the young kid. Is it Greenwood going to cause a problem? No, he's not, because he's a young lad learning his trade still. So it's just the easy option, and that happens. That happens in all levels, all over the world, I'm sure. And you know, I hear your point about dropping Bruno and stuff like that, but on that, okay, like I said, I agree. Well, we spoke about this many times of how big a fans we are of Greenwood. I think he's going to be an incredible player for Man United for the next, hopefully for the next 10, 15 years. I'm a huge fan, but at the minute, he's the young kid coming through. So unfortunately for him, he's the easy option.
I want to talk a little bit about Phil Jones. Phil Jones hasn't played for, I think it's over 2 years now. You know, we don't know exactly, you know, the main reason behind it. It's an injury after an injury. You know, there was also rumors that he, you know, mentally he just wasn't prepared to play, you know, for Manchester United, and that had a big effect on both him and obviously the injuries as well. But he came back and probably was the best player on the pitch against Wolves. And I want to split this into two, because I think it's absolutely fantastic to come back after 2 years and for what he's been through. Absolutely phenomenal that he came out there and he put in a performance. And you've seen how much it meant to him at the end. You know, he went off in tears, you know, as the Trafford end chanted his name. But, I think we've gone a little bit overboard on social media, where people are calling now for Phil Jones to be, you know, the centre-back for Manchester United moving forward. I think we have a little bit of amnesia there in regard to, and I don't say this with, you know, any malice or any happiness in my voice, but Phil Jones was absolutely shocking for the last couple of years of his before he got that injury from Manchester United. And you know, when it's well known the club were trying to move him on, they were trying to get rid of him, but his salary was so big, and then the club gave him another contract. I just don't buy into the fact that Phil Jones is the answer to our centre back problems. But that said, I think it was absolutely fantastic, you know, see him back after 2 years, and to put in, you know, a pretty solid performance. What's your view? I mean, I'd like to get your view on first how he played, and then secondly, are we overhyping Phil Jones and forgetting the fact that, you know, he wasn't great, even a couple of seasons up to his injury?
Yeah, I think to answer the first question, yeah, I was probably like loads of people, and I was actually at the club when Phil came, so I know him reasonably well as a lad, and he is a great lad, and he's a good character, and I was delighted for him. You know, 2 years out, you know, you just asked me at the start what it's like to train all week but then not play. He's had that week in, week out for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, he's probably not been injured for that whole period. He's probably has times where he's just getting back fit and he might be training, but obviously previous managers signed, you know, Mourinho signed Bailly, Lindelof, you know, Ollie signed Varane. So he's probably not been injured for the whole 2 years, but for the best part of that, he would have been, you know, really, really hurt and coming in, being in the gym. It's like you said, like, it's almost like going to work every day, but not really being allowed to do what you want to do and what you're actually there for. It's such. I mean, I was out for 11 months, was my longest period of time, and it's a tough place to be. So first and foremost, you know, a credit to himself for getting himself back and putting himself in a condition to play how he did, because he did. I thought he played really, really well. But in terms of the social media reaction and Phil Jones being the answer, listen, I'm not going to, knowing him, I'm not going to say he is or he isn't, but that's just the world we live in. You know, he could play, he could be man of the match for the next 10 games. If he gives a goal away in the last minute that cost Man United the game, it'll be Phil Jones, the worst player we've ever had. You know,
but is that what that's exactly what we're talking about now, but it's like 2 years apart. And because I remember 2-3 years ago when Phil Jones and Chris Smalling were absolutely getting lettered every week. They couldn't do anything. And now, let's be honest, they were making a lot of mistakes. And when we look at previous centre-backs we had at the club, you're kind of thinking, you know what, I just don't think this is working. And now here we are 2 years later. I know there's a massive gap in between. And all of a sudden we're talking about the second coming of Baresi. And I'm like, come on, guys, calm down. Like, it's absolutely fantastic that he gets back on the pitch, because like you said, and I never thought of this, you know, 2 years training and not playing, to get back out in front of Old Trafford, and to get pretty much a standing ovation from the Stretford end is phenomenal. But I think we need to be cautious here of how we overreact to this with Phil Jones. And I've met him on a few occasions, and he is a fantastic, he seems to be a well-liked guy in the dressing room. He's well-liked by the fans, and in regard to, when he's off the pitch as well. So I thought it was absolutely amazing to see him back, but I don't think he's the answer. I really don't.
Yeah, no, and like you say, that's 2 years of real hurt he's gone through. Would have been so tough for him. So even for him to just get back, he would have had moments where he's probably thought like retiring. So I echo everything you've said. It's fair play to him for getting back.
So now I want to move on to all the rumours and the issues that Manchester United seem to be having right now with all the leaks. I want to just start off with this from Wayne Moody. Players are a disgrace. Pressing is something you were taught at underage level. There's nothing revolutionary about it. If players aren't willing to fight and run, let them F off and bring in the under 21s. Or 23. It should be a privilege to wear that jersey. Some of them just picking up paychecks. I want to address this a little bit in a couple of different parts. First and foremost, my honest opinion, I think it's very difficult to motivate a player that's earning 200-300 grand a week. We've spoken about this in the past. I remember an interview by Sir Alex many years ago, and he said that was one of his biggest fears was constantly motivating players, that are earning more money than a manager. And he managed to do it with two great teams when all the money came in. Him and Arsene Wenger were the only managers, I believe, that were able to manage egos like that because they had enough, in the bank to say, you may think you've got a trophy cabinet, but I'm one of the best managers in the world. You'll never be on my level. But as there is no managers like them around anymore. You got your Klopps, you got your Peps, you got your Tuchel, you've got all these guys, but they're backed by a lot of money. They really are. I just don't think today's footballer in the Premier League, because I want to separate that from the Championship, the First Division, the Second Division. I want to separate that from that because I think the further you go down the league, the more passionate not only the players are, but the clubs are and the supporters are. That's just my honest opinion. We've spoken before about the Championship, how difficult it is to win that because it's I believe it's just from a passion standpoint, it stands on its own against the Premier League. The Premier League is just it makes you an instant millionaire, doesn't it? And how do you motivate a player that there's no goal there other than having to play every week? And I know you and I have discussed this as well in the past that's as a footballer, that's all you want to do is play every week. But that said, not just looking at Manchester United, but looking around the whole league, there's a host of clubs that have this problem right now where players don't really seem to care. They really don't. And that leads on to this part of it. If players aren't willing to fight, and run, let them leave. But you're probably going to bring in a player that is probably a similar mentality, is that when everything is going great, the world is great. When everything is going bad, you don't have a Roy Keane, you don't have a Steven Gerrard, you don't have a John Terry that's going to just give someone a kick in the ass. That those players are gone. That mentality, I believe, is gone from the Premier League right now. It should be a privilege to wear the jersey. It should be a privilege to wear any club's jersey that's paying you to wear it. Some of them are picking up paychecks. We know that. We see it every week. Sanchez was a prime example. We had that. I can't remember that defender's name from Chelsea many years ago that sat in the reserves for 2 years because he didn't care. He's not a one-off. We still have it today. I know that's a long-winded question, but what's your thoughts on that? In regard to the commitment, the motivation. It is a difficult thing these days to motivate multi-millionaires at the age of 21 and 22.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Because like you say, they've already sort of made it without doing a lot. In regards to the first team now and the Premier League players, they do care. There's no doubt because they're getting, okay, listen, they're earning a fortune. And like you say, most of them will be millionaires and that's just what comes with the territory, and they deserve that for the level of player they are for playing at that level. But I look at it from a slightly different way. They're playing every week in front of millions of people, match of the day, Saturday night. You know, the Premier League matches get shown worldwide, all different time, all across the world. So they're not going to want to embarrass themselves. So I do. Well, I know for a fact that they do care deeply. I just think sometimes when things aren't going great and there's perhaps they are unhappy with, you know, there could be a whole host of things that they're not quite happy with. That reflects in the body language, and then that translates to the fans that, oh look, he doesn't care, he's not bothered, or he hasn't closed down, pressed about that question there from Wayne. Like that, I just don't think that's true. I think, you know, for example, so he mentioned pressing. They're not closing down, bringing in the 23s, but they pressed against Liverpool for the first goal, and Liverpool, it wasn't quite right, and Liverpool popped round them and he made them look stupid.
Yeah.
So the game, another thing I want to think as well is the game, even from when I was, say, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was sort of 10, 15, watching football and then started playing football at a pretty serious level, it's changed miles apart, because I said this before, I think as well, everyone played 4-4-2. It was all about you getting the better of your opponents. It was put balls in the box, play forward, you know, be quite direct, get stuck in. That was what, especially the British game, was more built on. But with the influx of foreign players, foreign managers especially, and the tactics change and all the different formations and stuff like this, it has just, you know, Man City want to try and overload, play 4v2 in one side of the pitch and then switch it. How many teams now play 3 at the back? Wolves, Tottenham. That would never have happened 10 years ago. So I understand the frustration when things aren't going well and fans go, oh, they don't care. They're picking up all this money, which, yeah, true they are. But they do care. One, because of the professional. Sorry, not all. The ones who don't care, I think if you might get one or two in a dressing room who are just, no, I'm not bothered. I'm picking this money up. I'm going to be fine once I retire. I could retire next week and I'll be fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there isn't any of them. Of course there is. Probably one or two in every club. But the 90%, 95% of the players are deeply, deeply care, because one of the personal, professional pride. I think a lot of players will feel the weight of a responsibility that they are getting paid all this money. So therefore they have to produce on the pitch and pay that back. You know, and again, I don't think they want to. You definitely don't want to embarrass yourself if you're going into games and you haven't really put it in. You're not trained. You're not right mentally, physically. At that level in the Premier League, you're going to be shown up and you'll be dropped. Then you'll be unhappy. So, you know, I hear his point, but I can't agree with it.
Wayne Barton, Manchester United author, friend of the show, we'll call him. Asked this question here, you know, more difficult if you're not brought through the system like Scott. I don't think the players we bring in, Maguire, etc., are adequately prepared for the demand of playing for United, where every game is a cup final. At least the kids coming through have this education. I mean, I've always lived with that theory as well, that I think a lot of players don't realise how big Manchester United is. I think they just assume it's, especially, you know, and Maguire, you know, being in England, would probably get somewhat of how big Manchester United is. But a lot of the foreign players that come in, I don't think they understand and they get the full weight of Manchester United. You were lucky enough to come through the ranks at Manchester United through your teenage years and into the first team. So that would have been drilled into you from day one, how big this club is. Do you think there's a point to be made here that a lot of these guys get to there, and as soon as they're in that spotlight, they kind of freeze and they kind of go, oh my God, I didn't realize, you know, the weight of expectation? Because we all know that when Manchester United come to town, the stadium is full, and the team will always play that little bit better. I think that's just human nature. I mean, even you know, even at schoolboy level and Sunday league level, if you're playing against a local team that is deemed the best team in the area, don't you always raise your game? I just don't think that a lot of these players, you know, realize that every single game and every minute of every game is like that when you play for Manchester United. And when you're playing against professional footballers, it's twice as hard, 10 times as hard, because you're playing against players that are pretty good. You look at the Newcastle game, getting absolutely mullered by everyone. And then Manchester United come to town, we were lucky to get a draw. You know, it's the same. We went to Norwich. I know we won there, but, you know, it was by no means what other teams are going there and doing. are a lot of these players, can they not take the weight of expectation of Manchester United and a cup final every week?
No, I don't think they can. I completely agree with what Wayne said, and I agree with the thinking behind it as well, as that you've got to have a certain sort of character and you've got to come from a certain sort of makeup that, yeah, you're spot on. Every game, everyone wants to beat Man United because, okay, recent years they haven't been successful, but they're still worldwide known as the most sort of reputable club in England by some way. So every, like you say, every ground they may try and make it hostile. Every other team, they'll do everything they can. It is their cup final. Whereas if you've come from a club from overseas or another club in England where, it's okay to win one, lose one, draw a couple, then win again, then lose a couple, and that's the sort of demands and expectations of the club. That sort of will become, unless you're that special sort of person and you've got that drive and that character within yourself to, right, I'm playing for Man United now. This every single game, you've got to win. Otherwise, it's not good enough. That's the standards that were set, obviously through Alex Ferguson and his teams of how dominant they were, winning leagues, winning FA Cups, Champions Leagues, and they're the standards that have been. And ultimately, since he's left, they haven't been followed because the recruitment's not been right. The managers obviously have been questioned and undermined, and the club's been a bit of a mess at times. So, yeah, I completely agree. I think players coming through the youth team will have that from, Mason Greenwood, Marcus Rashford, Jesse Lingard. They would have knew that pressure and that feeling, the expectation from the ages of 9, 10, 8, whenever it was that they joined the club, dealing with that through every age group.
I mean, give it. Can you give us some insight into the expectations that was drilled into you when you came to Manchester United? You came into the youth team and then you went to the reserve, then you went to the first team. As Wayne saying, it's a responsibility and a privilege. Scott would have felt it that in the youth team and the reserve team, for sure.
I mean, so my youth team manager was Paul McGuinness, who was just an absolutely
fantastic.
Brilliant. Oh, honestly, and you don't really realise it until I left the club, really, and I see other coaches and youth teams and how they work, what they do. But it's just ingrained into you that you've got to win, but you're coached on how to do it and what it takes, and you're explained, everything's explained to you what you've got to do. How do you, I can remember a situation where after training once, I think he was speaking to Nicky Ajose, and he might not have been happy, or he was trying to explain something about what he had to do and how he had to improve his game, and he was comparing him to Nani, saying, if you want to get into the first team, you've got to do what he does and more, because he's already in there. So for you to overtake them players and get past the reserve players and then get into the first team, then get past the first team players, the amount of work, sacrifice and coaching that you need to do that is huge. And, the whole week was a tough week, but it's what it takes. And it's not a fluke. Listen, every player from the youth team isn't going to become a Man United regular, but you could look through, certainly from my time at the club, go up or down 2 or 3 age groups and go higher 2 or 3 age groups. The amount of players who have had really good careers in the game is astonishing, really. Much more than any other club in the country, for sure. And like you said, that was England. Then you go up to the reserves, and obviously Ollie was the manager. Warren Joyce again, another absolutely unbelievable coach for that stage. What they give you and what they drill into you day in, day out. It's almost like a relentless sort of attitude and a relentless way of training, that you've got to be the best you can be, otherwise you've got no chance. And under Ferguson, that's what the first team plays. I can remember seeing quotes, I think, from Paul Scholes, or speaking to him once, and saying that the games in training were harder than the games on a Saturday in the Premier League, because it was so competitive. It had to. You have people fighting for the places. It was just relentless. It was like a machine almost. It was like a well-oiled machine. From my time there, like I say, but we were given. Paul McGuinness would make us watch videos on the history of the badge and things like that. So you knew all about the history of the club. We watched videos on the Munich air disaster, and it was ingrained into you. So you knew what it meant for sure.
I do remember reading a quote from Ferguson's book saying that he wasn't just setting players up for the Manchester United first team. You know, he was setting, you know, men up to basically be men in their life, outside in everyday life, just setting them up for life rather than setting them up just for Manchester United Football Club. And that struck a chord with me because, as you just said, you know, it's so hard to get into that first team, and it's so easy, I believe, for a manager just to concentrate on the first team. But Ferguson's way was always that, you know, I'm not just setting these guys up to come into the first team. If they do, that's great. I'm setting them up to have a career in football, whether it's with Manchester United or with anyone else. But I'm also setting them up to be really, really nice people, you know, outside of the game. And I've been fortunate enough to come across and to talk to a lot of ex-players like yourself that came up through, you know, that era and through Ferguson's time. And every one of them are pretty much like yourself, very down to earth, and are just really nice guys. I don't think we're going to see, no disrespect to the current players that are playing around the Premier League now, I just don't see that in a lot of clubs. I think these players have become too overprotected. They've been too sheltered. I just, you know, we all know that we've lost the football that we loved from 10, 15, 20 years ago. This is just, and you said, you know, it's very different now than when you were 15, 16. You know, there's all these different formations. You know, there's 3 at the back, there's 5 at the back, there's, you know, the typical 4-4-2 was gone, and now we're playing 4-2-2-2-2-2-2-2-2. It's just, to me, it gets a little bit, you know, confusing at times of what the hell's going on. But I want to jump on now to all these so-called rumors and dressing room unrest that's at Manchester United. And I want to give you just a couple of minutes of what I believe is going on here. 4 to 5 years ago, we had the leaks, even 7-8 years ago with David Moyes. We know there were certain players leaking information, leaking teams and stuff like that. And that can happen in dressing rooms. I'm sure you know that. I'm sure there's players that have, that are disgruntled and they just want to, it's their way of feeling better by revealing certain things to certain journalists. And that, you can't stop that. But the level of bullshit that I've read in the past, and excuse my language, but the level of bullshit I've read in the last 3 or 4 days about what's going on at Manchester United is it's gone through the stratosphere. The numbers of players that are supposed to be unhappy was climbing higher than positive COVID tests. It really was. Once it was 2 or 3 players, and then it was 6, and then it was 11. Now we're at 17. We're at 17 players now. I'm like, what? 17? Come on. 17 players that are disheartened with Rangnick. They're disheartened with the players that have come in. They're disheartened with the coaches. I read one tweet that said, Harry Maguire, who has been relegated 4 times, is disappointed with the current coaching staff at Manchester United, and it's things that kind of make you laugh. But on a serious note, I do believe that there is, some players that are probably not happy about it. We know that they train in the morning now and they train in the afternoon, and he's coming out and he's not specifically calling out players, but he's calling out the team about body language and how they're playing and how they're not following his instructions and how, and it's, it's a breath of fresh air, because as much as I loved Solskjaer, his press conferences were terrible. You were screaming at the screen saying, just say he's shit. That's, just tell us that he's not playing well and put a bit of pressure on him. I don't believe in calling players out the way Mourinho did, but there's certain ways you can do it. And I think Rangnick is doing it very well. He's saying, as a team, we're not playing well. We're not pressing. I wasn't happy with all the back passes and the side passes. To go back to what I initially said, because we're Manchester United, every slight thing to put pressure on them, a journalist is going to write it and social media is going to blow it up. Our fans are swallowing it. Like, they're swallowing bricks at this moment in time. The amount of stuff I've read on social media about what's going on in Manchester, and you think the place is burned to the ground. It hasn't. Yes, there are players, I believe, that are not happy. And they're the players that will probably end up getting moved on. Scott, you play for Manchester United, you play for Leeds, you play for Liverpool. You're currently a professional footballer.
It sounded weird, that.
Yes, every time I say it, I'm like, how is someone that, I don't know. It doesn't happen. That'll never happen again, I don't believe. But do these things happen? First of all, do these things happen? Do players, like, if they get a little bit annoyed and upset, they'll go and talk to someone to leak a bit of news, put a bit of pressure on the manager. And then secondly, I just want to talk about Manchester United. You as a supporter, take off your football boots for a minute. Do you honestly believe that it's really that bad?
No, I think the exaggeration in the numbers and things like that, you can tell maybe, obviously, of course, there's players unhappy in every dressing room and every team. There's the old rule: if you're not playing, you're not happy, and that's why, again, going back to Ferguson, he was so good because he kept 20 international players happy. And they need to stop thinking about that because them days are obviously long gone now. But it's just not. It's just what it does. It just undermines the manager straight away, doesn't it? Even if it is BS, like you said, the way the world is now, and the social media. Every interview is on Twitter, Instagram. It's retweeted everywhere. It's on every news, on the radio. There's no getting away from big stories, especially for a club like Man United. Yeah. He's going to be asked about. I watch turn my TV on. What's on the TV? Reports of unrest within the dressing room with the manager's training regime and his assistant staff. Then I go get in my car, listen to TalkSport. Within 5 minutes, it's you can't escape it. So straight away. That the Man United players will know that. All the staff will know that. It just undermines him straight away. And listen, it's at this level now. It probably wouldn't happen because the profile isn't big enough. You're not going to find a player in League One who can speak to a journalist. It might get the local paper, but a club like Man United, all it takes is. A couple of exchange of text messages. Might be a player who goes, tells speak to his agents every other day. How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not happy. This is going on. That's going on. The agent might be probably trying to get the player out, or his player's not playing. So he's trying to put pressure on the manager. Goes to a journalist. Probably, of course, he's going to exaggerate a story to make headlines and get people talking about it. Of course, that happens. And again, I got to go back to the world we live in now. This is the new game. I personally hate it. Social media and Twitter, everything is just everywhere. Whereas, again, going back, I feel like I'm dead old when I say when I started playing, you had the local paper, match of the day, and that was it. There was. It wasn't that easy, probably. With the access, it's too accessible now, isn't it? You if you really wanted to, as a player or an agent, you could find any journalist on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook. You could easily do it, and you could within a few minutes and a few lines of text messages, you can be leaking information. Whereas never used to happen. And I'm going to say it again: under Ferguson, he wouldn't have allowed it. He banned journalists from turning up at the training ground. He had everything. He had so much power and control, which obviously he earned through the success he had. And Ragnick's just come in. Maybe the players aren't happy. Maybe the players could be right. Maybe it is not great. I hate using these two clubs as an example, but I can't remember the last time I turned my radio on and I heard unrest at Liverpool or Man City. But I'm hearing about Man United. You hear stuff about going on with Arsenal and Aubameyang. So there might be some truth in it. We obviously don't, only the people inside that training ground really know. But it's obviously it's not ideal for the club. The fans look at it and think, what's going on? It's just a mess, and it certainly isn't good for the manager. It just undermines him straight away.
No, I do believe there's no smoke without fire. I really do. I do think there's a couple of players in there that are probably not happy. Their daily routine is being disrupted.
No doubt that there's players unhappy. I think Van der Beek he hasn't really featured under him. Someone like Juan Mata hasn't kicked the ball under him. Jesse the same. So of course, the size of United's squad, it's going to be impossible to keep people happy anyway. So it was always going to be incredibly difficult. But it just doesn't. The players need to look at again, the way I was brought up is of course, let's say Van der Beek's unhappy. But I just feel there's a way leaking. I'm not saying it is Van der Beek. Could be anyone. Yeah. But there's just leaking stories. It's just a bit poor, really, isn't it? Just get on with your job. If you want to leave, go and speak to the manager. Ask to leave. Say you're not happy about X, Y, Z. But by the sounds of it, like we say, these players are probably running back to journalists, running back to their agents. It's
Well, we have the Martial incidents where, you know, his agent and him himself told the media that he wanted to leave. And in the next press conference, Ralph said, well, he hasn't come to me. And if he wants to leave, he has to come talk to me. I applauded that. I'm like, you know, that's how you conduct a football club. That's how you conduct yourself. You don't go crying to your agent who then goes crying to the media. He's not going to manage your story. He's not going to, I mean, this isn't John Gregory. He's not going to attempt to shoot you when Yorkie, you know, wanted to leave Aston Villa. You just knock on the door and you say, you know, you're not playing me. I'm out of here. I don't understand why they have to do this to undermine a club that has made them, you know, and this comes into it, has made them, you know, rich beyond their wildest dreams. Now, they're not coming to the table with nothing themselves. Obviously, they're fantastic professional footballers, but there's got to be a bit of respect there. Just go to the manager and go, doesn't look like I'm in your plans. You know, I'm out of here. I mean, I remember that story from Solskjaer before, you know, 98 time, I think it was, when Spurs were in for him and he wasn't getting his game and he went into the manager and he said, I want out. And Ferguson said, I want to keep you. I think you're going to be important for this club. I really want to keep you. I don't want you to go. That's how you conduct your business. You don't go crying to your agent and crying to the media. But the problem is, as you rightly pointed out, Manchester United is still one of the biggest clubs in the world. It's the biggest club in England. And, you know, you can have your Liverpools and your Arsenal, your Chelseas, your Man Cities try and believe that they are, but they're not. Manchester United is the biggest club in England. There's no doubt about that. So anytime anything happens, it gets blown way out of proportion, like we're just witnessing now at the moment. You know, that's what we're seeing. We're actually seeing this bullshit where every single thing is just blown out of proportion. But this is the way Manchester United's always been since I've supported them. It's always been this way. It's just social media now has just exploded. And like I said, over the past couple of months, it's got even worse. I know you and I have talked in the past about, you know, social media and Fergie didn't like you guys on it and stuff like that. But you save yourself so much time, wasted time of reading stuff that goes, that's not true. And then sometimes I get myself involved and go, do you honestly believe that that's true? And they're like, well, you know, this guy reported and that guy. I'm like, that didn't happen. We all know.
I seen it loads. Probably the most at Leeds, because again, it was a big club, so it had a big following, big social media following, and we'd be on the bus after the match and we'd see tweets from the journalist to be tweeting I don't know, whatever he could say. He could say a quote from the manager, or he would tweet something that he believes is true. And one of the lads would get the phone and say, have you seen what so-and-so just tweeted? And he'd be showing the lads and it would be like, it'd just be absolute nonsense. You know what I mean? But it's just crazy how people do it and get away with it. But everyone, the thing with that is then people have a bit of power.
Yeah. There's no accountability for journalists anymore. There's just no accountability. There really isn't. They can say whatever they want because it's all about clicks. It's all about, you know, interactions, you know, and Manchester United, that's what they live off. They mention it every time in their annual, you know, AGMs and stuff like that about how many clicks they got when Ronaldo signed. And it's mental that, but what it's created is it's created really bad journalism because they can literally say anything they want. And unfortunately, people suck it up and believe it. They really do.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, of course, why wouldn't people believe it? Because it's coming from a journalist. So a journalist could say anything he wanted and people are naturally going to believe it. Because unless you know the truth yourself, then that's your only information. You know, I think what's the famous quote from the actor Denzel Washington? If you listen to the media, you're ill-informed, but if you don't listen to the media, you're not informed.
Yeah.
It's absolutely spot on, you know.
It is, but it's one of those things where, you know, I think with the amount of people that's on social media, on Twitter especially, because that's where that whole cesspool is, you'll get a large majority of people that will just believe every single thing that's written about it. And then, you know, you get opposition supporters that will dive onto it knowing that it's not really true, but, you know, I'm still going to, you know, make a comment on it. But I did see a tweet earlier on by someone that I follow that said, you know, if you're in any doubt how big Manchester United is, I'm watching the transfer section on Sky Sports News, and they've spoken for like 10, 15 minutes about Manchester United, and we're not even buying anyone.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I was thinking as you were talking there, if there's a story about, who's a big club, Aston Villa, big club, but if there's a story about Aston Villa or Manchester United, what's going to get the airtime?
Yeah.
It's just, it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is. I got one more question for you, because this thing has been touted around as well. An alias has actually asked it, and I want to get your view on it. Buying Ronaldo was a mistake for Ollie. United were in cloud nine last season with these mediocre team. We came second, and we thought United would win the league. But Ronaldo has exposed Ollie's weakness. I'm not sure whether that's. I mean, like, is he saying that buying Ronaldo was a good thing and then it's a bad thing? So here's my view on Ronaldo. I thought it was a fantastic signing. I think it's still a fantastic signing. He's a top scorer. He's got 13, 14 goals. Unfortunately, social media have driven this narrative that Ronaldo was the problem. And every time he scores a goal, I'll tweet, I see the problem scored again. You and I have talked many, many times about Ronaldo and why he's doing nothing for 89 minutes and then boom, scores a winner out of nothing. That's why he stays on the pitch, and we all know that. Buying Ronaldo was, for me, a massive positive to Manchester United. But that said, because we're Manchester United, as soon as there's a problem, all of a sudden it's Ronaldo's fault. There's supposed to be a mini gang now in the Old Trafford dressing room of Harry Maguire and a few of his guys. They're going to go around Ronaldo's house and beat him up because he's undermined them in the dressing room. I don't believe that. And here's a prime example. If I can get you the examples, I'll text them to you later. Someone put up on Twitter a picture of Ronaldo on his knees, after scoring the winner right at the end, and Harry Maguire, and I think I believe it's Mason Greenwood, I think, are standing behind them, and they've taken a still from a video of their faces not smiling, and then someone reposted it with the video, and it was that split second that when he dropped to his knees and he was happy, and then instantly Harry Maguire goes over to him, Ronaldo stands up, and they're giving each other big hugs and patting each other on the back. But the amount of tweets and retweets the still picture got over the video was 10-1. And it's absolutely mind-blowing. To go back to this question here, Ronaldo, a big plus, or is he a problem in the dressing room?
I can't imagine he would be a problem in the dressing room. The only thing I think the problem he might have with a manager is the sort of weight he would carry with what he's done in the game. Yep. He's almost the standards, the quality he's played with over the his Real Madrid team won 4 Champions Leagues over the course of a few years. Obviously, the United team he used to play in. Let's not beat around the bush. Ronaldo's probably scratching his head at a few things that he's seeing. He probably is. You spoke about the centre backs we've got.
I'm sorry for cutting across him, but isn't this the same thing that Roy Keane used to do? Like he had a certain standard, and if you drop below that, he would be like, "What are you doing?" I mean, Ronaldo comes in and let's be honest, far better player than Roy Keane. He's won 4 of 5, I think, World Player of the Year. He obviously has a standard. What's the difference between Ronaldo expecting a standard and Roy Keane? Nothing.
Yeah, but in Roy Keane's era, players could react to that. Well, most players could. Whereas, again, people have changed. The game's different. So, listen, I don't think Ronaldo would be the same sort of character as Roy Keane. I think he's a bit more of a, what do you call it? More silent. And I've seen a few things about Gary Neville saying he didn't go over to the fans and he's waving his arms in the air, and his body language that the manager keeps referring to doesn't look great. And that's probably so. But that's obviously showing his frustration. I think the quality around there, I don't think he might not think the lads aren't trying hard or they're not working, giving everything. I think it would be a quality thing. I can see him make runs and the ball doesn't come.
Yeah,
he hasn't had many chances in recent games, whereas he probably had 3 or 4 chances every week while he was at Real Madrid and maybe Juventus.
He's allowed to be disappointed, is my point. He's allowed to be disappointed in people not being up to his standard. Now, obviously, they made a big deal out of he's not going to clap to the away fans. And, that's just something, a pet peeve of mine as well. I think all teams should just, especially the away fans, you should go, you take 10 seconds of your time, even walk halfway line and clap. This thing run down the tunnel. He's obviously knows now it's become a problem. He needs to fix that. But that said, to get back to the Ronaldo thing, I do, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's a bit of frustration around not just a certain player or a certain individual or a certain way of, it's just, you said it there, which I didn't think of. He hasn't had many chances. So maybe he's just frustrated with life in general at Manchester United. And is he not allowed to be? I mean, are supporters the only ones that are allowed to be disappointed? No,
absolutely. then it's quite difficult sometimes to hide your emotions, isn't it? And if his
Yeah,
obviously frustration and disappointment is being translated by people as, oh, he could be a problem. Look at he's got his hands in the air again. He's being a problem. And again, we're not privy to what goes on in the dressing room and the training ground every day. Is he speaking with play? Is he saying, he might be thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this manager, what he's trying to get us to do. He's worked with it. The list of managers he's played under is incredible. Mourinho in a prime at Real, obviously Sir Alex, Carlo Ancelotti, Allegri, I think at Juventus,
yep.
possibly at Pirlo, a few other managers, Zidane. So he might be thinking, well, I'm not sure
He
about
missed out on David Moyes, unfortunately, but
he and again, because of the weight and what he's done in the game, all of a sudden, if Ronaldo's raising his eyebrows and questioning what the managers, maybe his training methods, maybe it is double sessions. Players don't like doing double grass sessions because in the afternoon, if you've worked hard in the morning, you're tired and you're stiff and you're achy, and it sounds bad that fans will say, "Oh, forget the money they get paid and they've got to go out in the afternoon." But it's natural that you're stiff, you're tired. People don't enjoy it. He might be not happy with this. He might be not happy with the tactics. There's a whole host of things he might not be happy with. But again, people could latch onto that because of the weight he obviously carries in the dressing room. And look, we're just guessing. We don't have a clue. We're just trying to piece things together, aren't we? And try and make bones of the rumours, because, like you say, there's no smoke without fire. So obviously there's unhappiness in the camp, and it just, like I said earlier, it undermines the manager. And I think Ronaldo he's almost becoming a scapegoat, isn't he? Because he's coming to the end of his career, and the player he's the easy target. Paul Pogba was the easy target. I'm not hearing Paul Pogba mentioned anymore. It's all Ronaldo. So
I think Pogba has played better in the past month than he ever has for Manchester United in his whole career. So I think that's why people are leaving him alone.
Yeah.
Scott, one last question I have for you. As you mentioned earlier on, and you and I talked about this a few weeks ago. We went through a 6-game period or so against, no disrespect, but to lesser teams in the Premier League. We expected to get at least 15, 18 points because they were all winnable games. We dropped a lot of points over that time. We've won a few points. With the games we have in hand because of COVID, which I personally believe is not beneficial. Getting that time off. You and I talked about it. You said that if you're off for 2 weeks, you may be training, but you're still not match fit, and you'll lose that sharpness. And you said to me during the Newcastle game that Newcastle just looks so much sharper because they have been playing. And only someone like yourself, professional footballer, sees that, whereas we as fans go, "Oh my God, he's had 2 weeks off." Yeah, but he hasn't been lying on the beach in Mallorca. He's been training, and he has a job, and at the end of the week, he has to play those games to keep himself sharp. But the point is that have we lost that opportunity to break into the top 4 now, because we're going to start hitting a very, very difficult period. We got FA Cup games coming up. We got we've obviously got to catch up with those other 2 games as well. We're out of the League Cup, which is kind of a benefit that way. We got Champions League coming. I'm pretty concerned about Manchester United again. And I don't like talking about top 4, because for me, you either win the league or you don't. That's the way it is for me. You either win the league or you don't. Second, you might as well be 16th. As a supporter, I don't care if we come second. I don't care if we come third. I don't care if we come fourth. You have to win it. I don't care what anyone else comes. We don't get anything out of, fans saying, "Oh, we get into the Champions League." So what? Then we don't benefit money from that as a supporter. You want to win. That's all it is. Have we lost that opportunity to actually climb the table at this point and get in? Because with teams dropping points around us, I saw this as an opportunity when you're playing. And like I said, no disrespect, Newcastle, Burnley, Wolves. We should have smashed all 3 of those. But we didn't. And here we are sitting here with 4 points out of that 9. Have we lost the opportunity to gain on Arsenal, who were bottom, 3 games in? Liverpool, Chelsea, they've been dropping points. What does the season hold for you right now coming into January?
Well, I think the top 3 take care of themselves. Personally, I think Man City will win the league. I think Chelsea and Liverpool will be second or third. I think it is a massive opportunity. I remember we spoke about Ralph Rangnick's fixture list, and it couldn't have been kinder to him. So I think there's no doubt there's been a huge opportunity missed. Listen, we know the quality of the Premier League, but sorry, the quality of Man United squad should be getting more points than 4 from that 9. You've got to be thinking absolute minimum 7, minimum. You've got to be a 9 points really. If you're gonna consolidate that top 4 spot. I think there's plenty of time left. I don't think it's gone. I don't think it's any more secure. I think it's a huge opportunity missed with the kind games. But look, there's loads of games left. You're hearing stuff about Arsenal are going reasonably okay, but you hear the murmurs in their camp. Rangnick just has to put his stamp on it now and get the players back on side. Maybe clear a few players out who aren't happy there. And there's plenty of games left. United have got a big enough squad to deal with the fixture list, I believe, with the games coming up and the catch-up games. So there's plenty of times left to get in top 4. On your point about the top 4, I get it as a fan, but I think the money now, if Man United came 8th or 7th like they were with Moyes and they didn't play in Europe for a year, that would be a massive disadvantage when it comes down then to recruitment. Players, they're going to pick the clubs in the Champions Leagues, even the Europa League. They're going to lose out on revenue from the Champions League, from European gate. They're going to lose out on the gate receipts from all that. And the top 4 thing is a bit of mine as well. With we've got to get in the top 4, and it's because it's a lot. It's not about, like you say, competing and winning. It's more to do with money. But again, I just think the money involved with the Champions League and the TV these days, it is. If United didn't get top 4, that'd be a huge blow. It would be a big blow, for sure, if they didn't make that.
I think a club like Manchester United can probably sustain at least a year or 2 out of the Champions League. So. I don't fear us being out of Champions League for 2 or 3 years in a row. I think that's when financially we could actually get hit. But I think we're one of the few clubs in the world that could take that hit over a season or 2. But I'm always on this belief: you either win or you don't. And nobody remembers who loses cup finals. And nobody. We keep bringing up this team. Well, Ole got a second, and it was a fantastic achievement. But we finished 8 million points behind City. And we nearly got caught by Liverpool in the end, who were light years behind us at one point. I think the second was fantastic, but you either win the league or you don't. That's the way I see it these days.
Oh, absolutely. You're not going to talk about that season in 10 years' time, are you? You're just not. But if you won the Champions League and the FA Cup, you would, as a fan. You're going to. I remember, that season. What a season! We came 3rd or 4th, but we beat whoever in the quarterfinal. Then we went, people talk about 99, they talk about the Barca games, the Juventus semi-finals. They're the memories that fans have. Obviously, the final speaks for itself, but I hear your points. Absolutely, I agree with you.
So before we finish up, I want to just mention an article that we have on our talkofthedevils.co.uk, written by the impressive Manchester United author, Mr. Wayne Barton. I try to come up with a new word for him every week to keep him happy, and we'll go with impressive this time. We blow up his ego. It's basically talking about Rangnick and the previous managers we had and why we've come to this point. An absolutely fantastic read. Now, it's under a very difficult headline of Rangnick's Rebel Reds. Okay for me to say. Jonathan Ross may have a few problems saying that, and he may not be able to find it. But if you get yourself onto where talkofthedevils.co.uk, please take a look at it. Wayne has linked it to his Twitter account as well. Give it a like, give it a follow, give it a retweet. But it's an absolutely incredible article. Wayne has this great knack of being able to try and remove the emotion of a supporter out of an article, to try and see it from kind of like both sides of it. Whereas a lot of us we're either on one side or we're on the other. So again, on our Rangnick's Rebel Reds on talkofthedevils.co.uk, give it a like. Anyone that hasn't subscribed to the channel, please give us a like as well. We'd really appreciate it. Give us some feedback as well. Scott, as always, it's a pleasure and it's an honor for us to have you on the show. You always come with some, you also take the emotion of a supporter out of a lot of the questions that we ask, because we all want to be like, this is terrible, this is shit. and you know, no more so than when I like I said, I was texting during the Newcastle game, and you just, because I'm like, what? We're 2 weeks off. Why aren't these going? And for you to come back and go, yeah, but no one's match fit. You know, Newcastle a lot sharper. It's just
2 weeks off. I remember, I think Newcastle hadn't played for 5 or 6 days, and United hadn't played for, I think it was between 2 or 3 weeks. And it's just the rhythm of playing games mentally, just as mentally more than anything, really. You play a game, you're stiff, you're tired. You'd have that fitness in your legs, and even probably 2 weeks, I'd say, is but anything over 2 weeks, you can notice it. If it's a week, 10 days, sometimes you do. Sometimes you feel great over it, but obviously there was disruption at the training ground. There were certain players having to isolate. You know, I think that would have been a huge problem if players are having 7 days off at home. You can go for road runs and you can run in parks or you run on your treadmill, but there's almost no carryover from doing that to playing a match. It's completely different. Any player will tell you that. You can run 100k on a treadmill, but then 5 minutes into a game, you'd be blowing. So that, I think that was a problem, obviously. And like I say, it's just the rhythm of playing games. You play, if you play in every week, you feel fit, you're confident. You have that shut off, and you might, the players might have had to isolate, or the short numbers in training. That next game, it's like the first half an hour, you think you feel knackered after half an hour. It's just how the body works.
I get it. I do get it now. And like I said, it's easy for us to, when we're sitting on the terrace or standing on the terrace, as you can now in a lot of clubs. It's easy for us to go, oh my God, when I took 2 weeks off to go to Spain last year and I went back to work, I was all refreshed and ready to go. It's completely different, as we know, completely different. Scott, as I said, appreciate it. Hopefully you guys get the win the weekend. It's going to be a tough game against Spurs. Hopefully your injury doesn't hamper you, too long, and we see you back on the pitch. That offer is still open. You're 1 goal into the 5-goal Wayne Baker cake. You may want to check inside that cake, though. I've seen some of his cooking and his cooking as of late. He tends to be, he tends to like the overdone part of the food. So just be careful with that. But as I said, wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Big game on the weekend. Manchester United as well, playing Aston Villa. Stevie Gerrard coming back to Old Trafford. I just don't want to see that mug kissing that camera again. I really don't need that. But I'm concerned because their home form is shocking. But it's the FA Cup. I absolutely adore the FA Cup. So come on, Manchester United. Let's get through this round so the FA can give us another Premier League team in the next one, because that's the norm. Scott, again, appreciate your time. And
Dave, see you next time.
Everyone that's basically, giving us questions. We couldn't get to some of them. Some of them were not relevant to what we were trying to talk about here as well, but we will get around to them maybe on our Twitter feed and stuff like that. So as always, have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.